The raccoons were a very artistic family. Their home was more of an art studio than a dwelling, and to say it was a mess was an understatement. Renato Raccoon was a famous painter. His canvases with brilliant colors and swirling shapes were strewn all over the treehouse. Resley Raccoon made beautiful ceramics of every shape and size on her potter's wheel. There were vases, plates, mugs, bowls, and many more clay creations on every surface. Little Ronnie would use his mother's leftover clay to make amazing sculptures of animals, toys, and unnamed objects that sprung from his imagination. Ruby had a compulsion to make contraptions out of wood and metal. She loved designing houses, vehicles, and gadgets. Then there was Regina Raccoon. Resley would say that her middle child hadn't found her art yet. Regina was not entirely sure that she ever would. She felt abominably ordinary for being part of such a creative family. It wasn't that she did not love art. She did. She just could never sit still long enough to actually create anything. Not only that, she had the tendency to break many of the household artifacts. There was the time Regina was spinning around and around in the living room and knocked down a shelf full of her mother's finest pieces. Then once, she was jumping on the sofa and landed on Ruby's 2-story structure, breaking it into at least 7 pieces. Ronnie got into the habit of hiding his masterpieces from his older sister so that she would not step, sit, or otherwise smash them. Everyone needed a healthy dose of patience with Regina, and she was tired of feeling miserably out of place in her own home. Regina loved being outside to run, jump, and roll in the fields. When her father would give his children an outdoor painting lesson with canvases and easels, Regina would end up climbing the nearest tree instead. One evening after dinner, Regina was crawling all over the house, pretending to be a baby. She was so engrossed in her imaginary game that she barely noticed bumping into her father's easel that had a half-finished painting on it. The easel tipped over and the canvas flew off and was punctured by one of Ronnie's sculptures. Everyone in the house gasped. For a few seconds you could hear a pin drop. Then Renato blew his top. "Regina, how could you?" he bellowed in disbelief. "How many times do we have to tell you to be careful? I have been working on that piece for weeks. Now it is all for nothing because of your carelessness." Tears started streaming down Regina's face. She never saw her father so angry before. "I'm sorry, Papa," she whispered, hardly able to speak. "Sorry is not going to get me back weeks of work, will it?" he countered. "Renato, it was an accident," Resley said softly as she tried pulling him back. "It's always an accident with this girl," he raged and stomped out of the room. Regina was a puddle of tears. Resley came and gave her a big hug. "Oh, Regina, it will be all right," she comforted her disconsolate daughter. "Papa was so mad," Ronnie remarked to Ruby. "I never saw him blow up like that, even when she spilled water over one of his paintings." "Hush, Ronald," Resley chided her youngest cub. Regina's siblings started whispering to each other in a corner. All she heard was "clumsiest girl in the world" escaping from the murmur. "Papa hates me," Regina sobbed into her mother's embrace. No, sweetheart. He never could. It's just that he was making that piece for a very important client, and he worked very hard on it. Regina, you simply must be more careful. Your father will have to work extremely hard to make up for this," Resley explained. That night, while the raccoon family slept, Regina got up and grabbed her backpack from under her bed. She filled it with her sleeping bag, her favorite dolly, and as much food she could fit inside. Then she left the treehouse and entered the deep night under a sky full of stars. She walked directly towards the heart of the forest. She did not know where she was going, but she just could not stand feeling like an outcast in her own family anymore. She was tired of ruining everything around her, tired of no one understanding her, tired of being the only one who was useless, boring, and uncreative, tired of making everyone angry at her. She walked with her thoughts swirling in her head and paid no attention to where she was going. She just needed to get away. Hours went by and she continued walking. Finally, exhausted, she found a hollow at the bottom of a huge pine tree. She laid out her sleeping bag in the shelter and fell asleep. The next morning, Regina awoke to the sound of music. In the distance, she heard what sounded like a drum and a flute playing a happy, upbeat tune. She was entranced by the melody and just lay there, listening with a smile on her face. Her stomach growled, and she realized how ravenous she was. She sat up and devoured some food that she removed from her bag. Then the little raccoon packed everything back in her sack and started following the sounds. Regina walked very quietly until she found the source of the music. She hid behind a bush to get a better look. Under some enormous pines was what seemed like a troupe of performers. There were several tents encircling a campfire. It looked like the ensemble was a family of bobcats. An old lady cat was cooking something good-smelling over the fire. A big male was playing a set of hand drums, while a younger female played the flute. Several children danced joyfully to the music around the campfire. The scene looked like heaven to Regina. She just watched and listened, engrossed in the music. Though the music attracted her like a bee to a flower, she felt extremely shy to just barge in on the family's privacy. So slowly and quietly, she backed away from the bobcats. Once she felt that she was a safe distance from the family, she placed her sack down, sat on a log, and just listened to the music. She closed her eyes and started swaying to the rhythm. The flute trilled high and lifted Regina onto her feet. Eyes closed, absorbed in the sounds, she started to dance. She spun, she stomped, she jumped, and she swayed. The music magically moved her body this way and that. It was as though she were a puppet and the music her master. "You're a good dancer," said a voice. The spell broken, Regina stopped and looked around for the origin of the voice. She could see no one. Her heart raced, and she felt horribly scared and alone. "Don't worry," said the voice. "I won't hurt you." "Who are you? Where are you?" stammered the little raccoon. "Up here," directed the voice. Regina looked up and saw a young bobcat girl laying comfortably in the branch of the nearest tree. "Oh!" Regina exclaimed, embarrassed. "I saw you spying on my family and I followed you here. I'm Bala. What's your name?" she asked, and then gracefully jumped down from her perch. "Regina," the raccoon child whispered shyly. Bala smiled sweetly, which made Regina feel a bit less apprehensive. "No matter. Why don't you come join our campfire? My grandma makes the best porridge in the world, and she loves to share." Regina didn't move. "Come," urged the cat child. "We can dance after breakfast. It will be fun." Bala pulled Regina gently by the arm, and the raccoon allowed herself to be led by the bobcat. When the girls arrived to the campsite, the bobcats were sitting around the fire, eating porridge from wooden bowls. "Grandma," called Bala, "can you make an extra bowl for my new friend Regina?" All of the bobcats looked up at Regina with a mixture of curiosity and surprise on their faces. Bala guided Regina to sit next to her while her grandmother handed the girls steaming bowls. Bala's mother asked Regina where she lived. That is when the little raccoon realized that she was completely lost and did not even know in what direction her treehouse lay. She looked around and simply shrugged her shoulders with a worried expression on her face. "Just eat up now, child. We'll help you find your way home when we have full stomachs," instructed Granny Cat. After breakfast, Regina played with Bala and her two brothers and sister. She learned that the bobcats were indeed a family of musicians and dancers. They had been traveling for Bala's whole life, performing at every town and village that they passed. Bala confided in Regina that she was tired of always traveling and that she would love to settle down and have a real home. While the children played, the adults spoke in hushed tones, sneaking worried looks at Regina. They would point in one way or another as though they were deciding in what direction they should continue their journey. All at once, Bala's brother Ben grabbed the hand drums and her sister Beth pulled out a wooden recorder and they started playing the happiest tune that Regina had ever heard. Bala took Regina's paws and started spinning around with her. Suddenly, Daddy Bew grabbed a guitar and joined the musicians. Baby brother Buddy grabbed a tambourine and enhanced the rhythm section. Regina's heart flew to the clouds as though it had grown wings. She let herself be guided by the melody and felt more free than at any time in her life. The girls danced together as though they had known each other all their lives and had practiced the steps for months. Mommy Bliss clapped her hands joyfully at seeing the beauty in the girls' movements. Then she joined the girls, dancing to the fantastic family jam session. Even Granny banged her pot with her big wooden spoon to the beat and cheered on the girls. One song mutated into another, and the girls kept dancing, changing their steps as the music changed. Mommy Bliss got tired of dancing and pulled out her flute instead. Animals from all over the forest came to see where the wonderful sounds were coming from. At the end of one of the songs, the impromptu audience clapped and cheered. Regina gasped in surprise when she realized that they were clapping for her as well. Suddenly, from behind the crowd popped up the face of Renato Raccoon. "Regina!" he called. He ran to his daughter and gave her a big hug. "Regina! Oh, Regina, I was so worried. Oh, my darling, can you forgive me? I was so terribly upset," he said with tears of joy and relief in his eyes. Regina never saw her father so happy to see her. She immediately realized how much he loved her and that she was foolish to think otherwise. She squeezed him back with all of her strength. After their long embrace, Regina exclaimed with stars shining in her eyes, "Papa, Papa, guess what?" "What, my darling?" asked her father sweetly. "I found it! I found my art! I am a dancer!" she proclaimed, bursting with joy. A look of comprehension blossomed on the father raccoon's face. He nodded with the realization and said, Of course you are! My dear girl is a dancer!" "Let me show you," she told him. Regina then turned to the bobcats, who were all very pleased with the scene, and asked, "Can we do one more song, please?" As an answer, Ben started beating his drums very quickly, and the rest of the family joined in. Renato could not believe how gracefully and nimbly Regina moved. He cried with joy at seeing his little girl find her art at last. After the song, Renato begged the Bobcat family to come to town and be their guests of honor. He and Regina helped them pack up and they all walked back home. Bala and Regina skipped, hopped, and twirled together while the others walked. The Bobcats and Regina put on a show the townspeople never forgot. Afterward, Renato and Resley convinced the family troupe to stay and live in the town and to open up a dance and music school. Not only did Regina and Bala become best friends, their families also became very close. Soon, no one remembered that Regina had ever been anything but a brilliant dancer.